All right, so would you like to do a hour-long yin, or would you like to do an extended, longer than an hour? I'm not sure exactly how long it is, but maybe 75, 90 minutes. What do you think?
Hour sounds good to me. I'll go
Hour?
down to the vote. I'll back you on that one because your shade's going to fade pretty quick.
Well, you can move over, but okay. An hour, is everyone good with that? Yeah? All right, cool. All right, so let's start with a butterfly. We're going to join the soles of feet together. And we'll just come forward and down. This is my spine flow. So just nice and relaxed. Let the gravity take over. And you push your feet out away from you, comfortable distance. And what you want to feel is the effect in your back. Okay, if anyone has a question about anything spiritually related, yoga related, if you need some dating advice, let me know, and I will do my best to answer any questions, help you out with that. Otherwise, we'll just be here for about 5 minutes. Hopefully the bugs will be kind. We won't have to worry about anything. So spine flow affects the spine. It exercises the spine. We try and move the spine through its 6 articulations. And by doing so on a regular basis, we hope to keep the spine healthy and strong. And the key to what I just said from a yogi's perspective is regular basis. So yoga is an intervention, or it's poor as an intervention. What do I mean by that? Well, that's a term that's used in medicine. And an intervention is when someone is kind of going downhill. Their health is going downhill. They're getting sick, whatever it might be. So you intervene with medicine, with healing. And the intention is to change the course of this person's, their health. So Western medicine is very good with aggressive interventions. Maggie, who many of you know, my girlfriend, she is a surgeon. Surgery is probably the most aggressive intervention that's possible. And as a result, it generally, I'm generalizing here, so don't, whenever I'm generalizing, which is always, you have to know that there are exceptions. So if you're like, oh, well, that's not true, my Uncle Joey, well, that's the exception, okay? But generalizations means that, more than 50% of the time, whatever, just most of the time, the case will be true. So generally speaking, Western medicine, very good with extreme interventions, and we want them when we're in really bad shape. So surgery, Maggie says she hopes she never needs surgery as long as she's alive, ever, for anything. And she says that it should be your last resort. So if, someone's like, hey, I know a witch doctor who can help you, like, go do that first. Try that first. Try acupuncture, acupressure, yoga, witch doctors, black magic. Try everything else first. And then if you cannot heal yourself through these other means, including other forms of Western therapy, I mean, I'm not excluding, things like chiropractic, Feldenkrais, there's all kinds of modalities that are out there. Magnetism, some people use magnets to help heal. Hypnotism, right? All kinds of avenues that we can explore. And if none of them work, then we're probably a good candidate for surgery. And surgery may or may not work as well. So my point the reason I got on this is yoga works in a very different way. Yoga in general, in terms of our physical health, but also our spiritual health, is going to work best if it's done on a regular basis. Coming to one class, one spine flow class, if we have a bad back and expecting that to heal our back, it's not going to happen. And if we have a bad back, that is likely, from the yogic perspective, tied in with other things.
Hey, Douglas?
Yes.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is something that happens in this pose like all the time for me.
Yep.
I'm not with you in person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it hurts. Like, it's pretty edgy all the way down the back of my right leg.
Okay.
Left leg, I feel nothing, it feels fine. But it's super edgy.
Okay. Let's take our legs out straight and we'll fold forward. Now, does it go away with your legs straight?
Yeah, it goes away when I sit up.
Okay, so point to where it is.
It really, truly feels like it starts deep in my glutes, goes all the way back to the back of my knee, all the way down to my toe. Like it's the whole, like it is the whole leg. It feels more it sort of feels nervy.
Yeah, I think it's your probably your rotators. In that position, your rotators are flipping out for some reason.
That's all. I just thought.
Is that the side? Is that the knee that's bad?
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
That whole leg is probably it's flipped out. It's not right. So we can look at that.
That's fine. I did.
We could
I
do.
was being shy at first, but I was like, man, I should really seize this moment since we're working.
Yeah.
Thank
All right,
you.
so just coming forward and down. And you're looking for basically the same idea, a gentle stretch along the back of the spine. If this does not agree with you, so Jen, for instance, if you're not comfortable with that position, you can repeat the last pose. It's perfectly fine. You could do the butterfly again. And again, what we're doing here is we're gently stretching the back of the spine, what's called articulating the spine. And even though this may not seem very fancy or exciting or dramatic, oftentimes that's what we need to maintain our health. It's not anything dramatic. It's not a big surgery. It's not any kind of big dramatic thing, a big retreat or going, to India or something like that. A lot of times what we need in terms of our spiritual health, in terms of our physical health, is more of a routine, just a regular routine that we commit to. Now, many of you I've met in yoga studios, and pre-pandemic, part of our routine might have been going to the yoga studio, right? And we go to the yoga studio, we do a few classes, on a regular basis. But as we've all experienced, sometimes even that avenue is taken away from us. And with modern technology, we could connect with our teachers online, that's nice. But it also can happen where maybe even that avenue is taken away from us. So it's a good idea to have a practice that we do at home and we can do on our own. And the one that I recommend for my students is just the seated meditation that I teach. And just 21 minutes, and most people can manage that. And the people that do it and commit to it and do it on a regular basis generally report that they notice the effects in their life, that it really is life-changing. So this is important for us to be reminded of, because in our culture we like the instant, right? We like the stories, the spiritual stories where it's like the student goes to the master and says, teach me or show me God. In yoga books, it's very often, show me God consciousness or reveal God to me, something along those lines. If you're allergic to the word God, you don't have to use God. You could use source. You could use oneness, unity consciousness would be another name. You could, all the same thing. But in in our culture, we sometimes grow up with an idea of God that is contrary to unity, right? We can grow up with the idea of my God, not your God. God loves some and not others, right? That's not really unity consciousness. So unity consciousness is this all-pervading love. And I really like that. I think it's a Christian thing where they say God is love. I think that that's right. I think that's right. But I don't think you can say God is love, but love doesn't love certain people. God is love, but not for gay people, right? I don't think it works that way. So that's just me. You know, different people will give you, you know, an explanation. Well, it's a perversion of nature and, you know, all this kind of stuff. Okay. But I'm not going to worry about that. This is my take on it. So God is love and love consciousness. So we like the story where the student goes to the master and says, show me God, or show me this, and the teacher bops them on the head. Maybe they make them go through a bunch of challenges first, right? They say, well, go to the top of Mount Kailash and bring me back this rare flower. And he makes them do all these things, swim across the sea, do this penance, do all this stuff. And then right when the student is about to give up, the teacher comes and bops him on the head, and then they have God consciousness. And we like that. So that's what we like in the West. Oh, yes, I want to have that ecstatic experience, and I want some kind of dramatic story like that. Let's unwind and we'll come back onto our back. Just relax. Feel the rebound, the sensations in your body wherever you feel them, wherever you notice them. They may not seem very significant, but going deeper in yoga means generally noticing things that we used to not notice, things that we assumed were insignificant, unimportant, or undesirable. All the enlightened people tell us that enlightenment, spirit, God is right in front of our face always. So how could we miss it? How could we miss it? Well, I'll suggest something to you. These things are hidden in the places we don't look. So we can just ask ourselves at any moment, what am I not wanting to, willing to look at right now? That's where you're going to find divinity. That's where you're going to find God. All right, let's bring our legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out a little bit with a little bit of movement. Try some different things, you know, experiment. See what brings back a sense of balance and relief. Good, and then let's hinge down. So we'll slide our hands under our hips, palms down, extend the legs up toward the ceiling. If there's any pain in your back, you're going to bend your knees, otherwise the legs straight. Take a deep breath. Exhale, lower the legs toward the ground. Just before they touch, pause, take a deep breath. Exhale and relax on your back. All right, banana pose is next. Let's move our hips to the right edge of our mat. And then take your left leg and move it to the left. Cross your right ankle over your left ankle. Reach up, grab your right wrist with your left hand, and then pull your right wrist over to the left. So Nancy, bring your legs this way. So everything except your hips are moving to the left. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like something's wrong. I see.
So yeah, you want to form the letter C, and you want to feel a stretch in your right waist. Okay, and if you don't, I want to hear from you. And if this doesn't feel safe, I want to hear from you. All right, so these dramatic stories. Has everyone here read Autobiography of a Yogi? Well, full of dramatic stories, right? Full of drama and intrigue and fantastical, seemingly impossible things happening, right? And we read that and we're like, oh my God, that's yoga. That's what I want. I want that. I want the guru in the saffron robes. I want the tap on the head that gives me that experience. I want bliss and ecstasy like instantly. Now, I'm not going to say that those things don't happen. I'm not going to say that Yogananda is lying or that those things aren't true. For all I know that they are. But I will tell you my experience in spirituality. And at this point in my life, I've been immersed in spirituality, deep spirituality, for more of my life than I have not been. I wasn't fortunate enough to be born into it. Some people are. But I've at this point crossed, the threshold where for more of my life I've been exposed to these things. And for the vast majority of people that I've personally interacted with, that I've taught, that I've met, other teachers, I have not met a teacher who has actually said, oh yeah, that instant thing, we can do that. We can do that. That's what happened to me, and that's what I'm going to do for you. I've not met one. I've not met anyone who's had that kind of experience either, personally. I've read about it in books. Sounds, again, very dramatic, very interesting, intriguing. Go to India, go to an ashram, meet the guru, have a mental breakdown, right? Cry for like 3 weeks straight. Then one day the guru comes to your room, says a prayer, whispers a mantra in your ear, and all of a sudden you see a bright light. And then from that day forward, everything was clear. You never had another doubt in your head. Again, very dramatic, beautiful. Wow, yes, yes, that's what I want. Not met anyone who's had that. So what have I seen? I've seen that the people who are willing to make their spiritual practice a regular part of their lives, they begin to experience amazing things in their life. And I'll qualify that by saying your life is already amazing. Human life is already a miracle. Now, I think most of us know that on some level. The real question is, do we feel it? Because if I ask you, probably all four of you, if I say, is human life a miracle? Intellectually, you're going to say, yes, absolutely, it's a miracle. So when you're in the presence of a miracle and your alarm goes off in the morning and you're like, oh God, does that feel like a miracle? Probably not. But with these tools, one day we can even experience that as a miracle. We can experience 285 traffic as a miracle. We can experience getting diagnosed with cancer, terminal cancer, as a miracle. It all gets recognized for what it really is. Let's switch sides. Okay, so move your hips over to the left side. Take your right leg to the right. Take your left ankle over your right ankle. Reach up, grab the left wrist with your right hand, and pull yourself over until you feel a stretch in your waist, maybe up in the ribs, maybe down to the hip as well. Okay?
That's either like a hawk or a kestrel. Is that loud?
Ooh, what's a kestrel?
It's between a falcon and a hawk. It's like a little bit smaller than a falcon or a hawk, but still a little bird of prey.
Hmm.
That loud.
Hi.
Yeah, that's a bird of prey.
Nice. You taking notes, Jamal?
Yep. Don't get this in the studio.
Kestrel. Interesting. All right. So, this principle applies to most aspects of our life. If there is something we don't like about our life, for instance, I'll give you a personal example. For me, my voice. I've been a musician most of my life. I've been playing music almost all of my life, but I've also been, again, I've been semi-professional. I've made money. I could make money playing music. Never enough to live off of, but you know, I could play in a band, make some money. I could make a recording and sell it. People would pay money for it. I've had music placed in ads and movies and things like that. Again, not enough to live off of, but you know, I could get paid to make music. And for the longest time, my spirituality, my music were sort of separate from one another. And when people found out that I was a musician and I taught yoga, they'd always say, "Oh, do you know about kirtan?" I'd say, "Yeah, I know about it, but it just doesn't, it's not for me. It just isn't, doesn't feel authentic. I don't feel like I'm doing it justice, and I enjoy chanting, but I'd rather listen to other people chant. I don't necessarily want to be the one doing that." And it was that way for about 7 years. And then one day, I just knew, as one does, that I needed to have chanting in my November retreat that year. And I didn't know if I was going to chant, or if I was going to hire people to chant, or if some of my students would lead the chant. I had no clue. I just knew we have to have this. And so I quickly figured out that I'm the only person who's always present. That as much as people tell me, "Oh, I just love your class, I love your teaching, I want to come to every class, I want to come to every retreat," no one is at every retreat. No one is at every class. Only me. So that meant if we were going to consistently have chanting or music, I had to be the one doing it. So as much as I am not a vocalist, I am not a singer, I put myself out there and I said, okay, I'm going to start singing. Now, one of the things that's interesting is I got tested, my aptitude was tested probably over 10 years ago now. And aptitudes supposedly are things that you cannot learn. They're gifts that you have. You either have them or you don't. You can refine them, but you cannot create them. And music and musical ability is an aptitude. And I got tested hoping that I would discover some hidden talent. Because music's not a great way to make a lot of money, folks, unless you are 1 in a million, right? Like, you have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than being in U2 or some big band like that. So, sure, the members of U2, they've got lots of money, but most musicians are struggling. It's a hard way to make a living. So anyway, I got tested in the hopes that I would discover a hidden talent. And they'd be like, "You are going to be a genius at accounting. Go become an accountant and you'll make lots of money." But alas, I got tested and they're like, "You have like an off-the-charts musical ability. You could easily be a professional musician." And I'm like, all right, tell me something I don't know. Let's unwind. Just relax into a neutral position. Feel the rebound. Yeah, actually what I'm doing now is probably perfect for me. They were like, you have this sort of scientific, you know, kind of bent, although I'm really bad with math, and that was also proven. So like actual science with numbers is not a good idea, but philosophy, logic, you know, understanding systems like yoga, that's actually, my brain is very well wired for that. So this is a very natural fit for me. And it brings a lot of things together. I'll finish my point though with that. Let's bring our legs in. Give them a little squeeze. Shake it out, move around a little bit. And then when you're ready, hinge up this time. Go ahead and come on up to seated. All right, let's move into a tabletop position. So hands and knees. And we'll move our hips side to side, forward and back, roll our head and neck around, shrug our shoulders, just loosen up a bit. And then when you're done with that, you can tuck your toes and come into a down dog. Same idea, sort of stretch out a bit, move around a bit, loosen up. And then let's come into a Sphinx. So we'll come forward onto our belly and we'll prop ourselves up on the elbows. And what you want is to feel a little bit in your back. Not too much, but not too little. If you want to go further, you take your hands a little wide and you straighten them. That's called a seal pose. Now your legs can be together or apart. Your head can be held up, drop forward, drop back. Shoulders can depress or relax. You can squeeze your buttocks and thighs or let them relax, okay? And again, if something about this does not feel safe or you're not feeling it in your back, let me know and we'll take a look at it together. Okay, so let me finish my point about the aptitude testing. My point about that is I have a really, really good ear. And that means that I hear things that other people might not hear. And bad music, bad singing drives me nuts. And so when I started singing, I was like, this is really bad. And other people are like, oh, it's great, you know, whatever. They're fine with it. And I'm like, no, this is not good. And I still did it because I felt that's what the community needed. And I went and saw, does anyone know Mickey Singer? He's an author, spiritual teacher. Anyway, I went and saw him speak, and it was beautiful. He has a beautiful space down in Florida called Temple of the Universe. And he gives talks on, I think, Thursday and Sunday. And my dad and I were in Florida, and I was like, hey, let's go hear Mickey Singer talk. We went down there, saw him talk. And before he talked, he had this Casio keyboard on the floor. Oh, thank you.
I do readings.
Okay, awesome.
One of the top 5 psychics in America. So
Oh, great.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Yeah, you too. So he had this keyboard on the ground, like a Casio keyboard, not a harmonium, right? Like a Casio with like speakers in it. And I'm like, oh, maybe we're gonna have some music. Well, he sits down on the floor, you know, before his talk, and he starts pounding on his keyboard. And I think it was Saraswati, and he's like, yeah, Saraswati, Saraswati, ah. And it was not pretty, but it was great, right? It was, because chanting isn't really about being pretty. It's not like, I think some of you saw the posts I put up. Kirtan is not entertainment. It is a practice. So someone like Mickey gets that. He's just like, hey folks, like, I don't care if my voice is scratchy or out of tune or whatever. This is a practice, and we're going to practice together. And I love that. But for me, again, in my mind, or for me, my voice and where I was with it was always, I felt like it was a limiting factor in terms of delivering this practice. And so at a certain point, I said, what do I need to work on? What do I need to do? And it was very clear, my voice. I need to work on my voice. And it doesn't mean I'll ever be Freddie Mercury or Bono or any of those people with these amazing voices that people, will pay tons of money to go see and travel across the world. But we can always improve, right? That's basically what yoga is telling. Like, if we're not doing anything for our physical health, and then we start doing a practice for our physical health, our health will improve. Doesn't mean we're ever going to be a Olympic athlete, right? That's not the point. It's really about us drawing forth our best. So I began practicing on a regular basis, my vocals, and every day spending some time working on my voice. Some days it's very little, other days it's hours. And I have definitely noticed a difference. Even if it doesn't sound any different, it definitely feels different. And yoga to me is really about that. If other people look at us and they're like, you're doing all that yoga and you're the same jerk you've always been, that's fine. Haters are going to hate. That's a really true statement. Haters are going to hate. They're going to find something to hate. And there will people who always will hate you, and there's nothing you can do about it. It doesn't matter how spiritual you become, how much yoga you do, how enlightened you become. Someone will come along and criticize you. That's just part of the unenlightened human nature. That's just part of the ego. All right, let's go ahead and come on down. Relax for a moment. Short rebound. Then when you're ready, press back to a kneeling position. You can sit on your heels, between your heels, or on a block that is between your heels. Your toes can point back or out to the sides, okay? And your knees can be together or wider apart. If you feel a stretch at the front of your thighs, you're going to stay right there. If you don't, you begin to lower back. Maybe onto your hands, maybe the elbows, perhaps to the crown of your head, and maybe all the way back onto your back. Now, if this is dangerous for you, and it might be, then you can repeat the last posture, which was the seal pose, Sphinx or seal. Okay, this is the saddle pose. So this is expressed in Zen Buddhism in a way that I really, really like, guys, and I want to share that with you. So Zen Buddhism says, you are already perfect, just as you are. But it will take a lot of practice for you to realize that. One mistake I see people in yoga making, and sometimes famous yogis make this mistake, is that we are trying to fix ourselves. This comes from a very Western idea of original sin. Now, I'm sure Jen knows more about the Bible than I do, and maybe she can tell me where that teaching originates from. But I suspect, even if it is in the Bible, and even if it is something, that is inherently Christian, it is probably understood. I actually have my own understanding of, original sin and all this kind of we're all sinners, and I'll tell that to you someday. I don't think I have time to do it today with the time that we have left, but I'm happy to share that with you at some point. But this is a prevalent idea in the West. There's something inherently wrong with me that I need to fix. Well, we can ask ourselves, if, let's say we're a Christian and we believe in God, a creator, how can an all-perfect being make something that's flawed? How is that possible? It's not. And so what that means is the imperfections that we perceive in ourselves and in others is a misperception, a misunderstanding. Now, as I said earlier, even if you say, yeah, I get it, yes, I get it, chances are when you see certain politicians, you're going to think, well, God messed up there. I'm sorry, God, what were you doing? What were you thinking? You messed up, man. Come on, look at this guy. How do we get to the point where it's no longer an intellectual concept and we are no longer making exceptions? We are universally applying this principle that one of my teachers put it this way once: God don't make no junk. I love that. God don't make no junk. God does not make mistakes. So, I think it's the Gospel according to Thomas, which was a gospel that was removed from the Bible at one of the conferences that they had. But it was originally part of the Bible. It was one of the Gospels. According to Thomas, Jesus said that heaven is spread upon the earth and people or men do not see it. In Buddhism, again, in later stage Buddhism, it is taught that samsara, which is the world of suffering that we live in, the world of time and space and change that seems to cause our suffering, it's taught that samsara is nirvana. You think you're going to go to nirvana, you think you're going to go to heaven, you think you're going to escape? There's no escape. It's seeing or realizing that you're already in heaven. That is what Buddhism, that is what yoga, that is what any wisdom tradition really wants us to see. All right, let's unwind and we'll come back onto our back and let's just relax. Feel that rebound. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. Shake it out, move around a little bit. And then when you're ready, let's take a twist. Right knee over left knee and drop the knees down to the left side. You can position your arms wherever they are comfortable, your knees, wherever they are comfortable, your head and neck as well. Let your shoulders remain on the ground as your right hip is drawn over your left hip by the weight of your legs, more or less. So again, wouldn't it be nice if you could come on my next retreat and you could have one of those aha moments? And many people have those moments on my retreats, by the way. So I'm not saying they don't happen. But even when those aha moments happen, we very often find and discover that the ego has a way of reasserting itself. It finds a way. You might sucker punch it with your spiritual practices for a moment, and it's disoriented, and you just experience all the love, all the grace that is always present. The love that is always present. And you see that clearly, you experience that, you know that. But what tends to happen is we come home, even if we didn't come home. You know, I think some people go up to LOE with me on retreat and they think, if I could just stay here. Yeah, Kate moved there.
Awesome.
Kate was like, hell yeah, sign me up for this. And then she ended up worrying that her roommate was going to come in with a knife.
Burn the house down.
Burn the house down, right? Okay. So we can't really run from the ego. And for most people, that initial awakening and even subsequent awakenings, because very often we can have multiple ones where we have an awakening and then we have a deeper awakening and a deeper awakening. And again, for some people, these are dramatic. They kind of lurch forward. It's like they're in one state of being consciousness and then something happens, they kind of click forward, boom, and then they're in a different state of consciousness. But it doesn't mean that they're free of their ego. And as long as the ego is still present and functioning, then we are still prone to suffering. Suffering will likely show up in our lives sooner or later. So for me, what I've seen is it's the people who are willing to develop the discipline, and it does require discipline, and that's not a word that's popular in our culture. We don't like hearing that. We much rather, spend $10,000 on a trip to India and again see the guru and get the instant version, even if we have to save up for it. We don't want to hear that it takes discipline. We don't want to hear that it takes regular practice. But that is what I've seen work. In all my years, all the people I've met, and I've met, again, tons of teachers, famous teachers, met all kinds of people in spirituality. I have not met anyone who says, oh yeah, here's the shortcut. Here you go. This is the instant version. Just go see this teacher, ask them for Shaktipat, and you're good. Even if you get Shaktipat, and even if you have an aha, oh my God, experience, you will still have to do regular work in order to realize, again, what in Buddhism, they're going to say, you and everything are already perfect. But it takes a lot of practice to see that, to experience that, to know that as a reality. Let's switch sides. So again, these are things that are very often confused in the West. And when I read the teaching of Jesus, I actually see someone who I think was trying to clear up some of these misconceptions. So for instance, there's a story of when he's with a group of people and someone was caught sinning and they were ready to stone him to death because that was the done thing, right? If you're a sinner, you get stoned to death. And what does Jesus say? He says, let those amongst you who are without sin cast the first stone. Forgiveness. Also recognizing that we all have made mistakes. And Jesus is representing love, God, right? God is love. Can you think of a more loving quality than forgiveness? Understanding, compassion, assuming the best of the other. When was the last time that you did that? When someone was on the other side of the political spectrum, on the other side of a point of view that you had. Instead of assuming the worst about this person is a monster, you assume the best. This is a loving, caring person. They probably have many people who love them dearly. They are probably doing what they think is right. Maybe they're confused. Maybe they're afraid. But maybe if I show them that they don't have anything to be afraid of, that I'm not attacking them, that I'm willing to listen to them, I'm willing to try and understand their perspective. Maybe, just maybe if I do that, they'll begin to soften. Does something that's rigid and hard change very easily? No, it doesn't. So if we can get people to soften, you don't get people to soften by attacking them, telling them that they're wrong. And the same is true of us. If we practice yoga with the idea that I am somehow inherently wrong, there's something wrong with me, I'm inherently bad, I'm imperfect, I think we can practice yoga for the rest of our lives, maybe even lifetimes, and there'll still be something wrong with us. We'll never be quote unquote perfect, because what does that even mean? Has there lived a human being on this planet who everyone is willing to agree was perfect? Some people might be tempted to say Jesus, but I know people who would be happy to say that Jesus wasn't perfect. In fact, I know people who would say Jesus created lots of problems because he was the start of Christianity, and they're not fans of Christianity. I'm not saying it's my view, but there are people who see it that way. They see religion as not a force for good, but as having created a lot of division. And they're not wrong. Religion, when it is misunderstood, when it is misrepresented, can create division instead of unity, unfortunately. So we need to soften. We need to soften our attitude about ourselves. Now the trouble is, if we get too soft, we don't have any discipline. We don't do the work that's necessary. And again, as I already established earlier, from what I've seen, it's the people who have the discipline and put in the work. They are the one who reap the rewards. I have not seen the shortcut method. I don't see that working. I've not seen it work, and I don't think it's going to work. The people who seem like they got a shortcut are likely people who've done this work from the yogic perspective in past lifetimes. All right, let's unwind. We'll relax on our back and just feel that rebound. So many of you have heard me talk about yin and yang before. And this could be looked at in terms of yin and yang. I need to be very patient with myself, very forgiving, very loving, very compassionate. And yet I can't baby myself. I can't make excuses. I don't have time for meditation today. I don't have time for spirituality. I'm too busy. I'm too stressed out. I'm too sad to practice. Oftentimes when we're the most sad or we're the most upset, that's when we can actually get the most out of our meditation practice and our yoga practice. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. Shake it out a bit. And then why don't you guys pull in a bit? We're going to do some yoga nidra.
What do you mean by pull in?
The sun is starting to get